Okay. Ajnanitimidandasya Dhyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulamanithanjena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaye Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tad Bhaktaya Namo Namaha. Yam Pravajantam Anupeta Apeta Krityam Lapayano Viraha Katara Ajuhava Utreti Tanmayataya Tadavo Binedus Tam Savabhutam Hridayam Munimanatosmi Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatam Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat Bhaktya Vihina Parada Lakshai Kriptascha Kamari Tarangamadye Kripa Maitram Sharanam Prapanna Vrinde Namaste Charanada Vindam Tave Vasmi Najivami Tvaya Vina Iti Vigyaya Radhe Tvam Nayanam Charanandike Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So we're going to begin by first offering our most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of our beloved Gurus, unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitha Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada, and unto Sri Guru Pada Padmanitha Bhavishta, Om Vishnu Padasta Tarsat Sri Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj, unto our exalted Rupanuga Guru Varga, and all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. So, by the grace of all the devotees here, we had a wonderful celebration yesterday, worshiping Srila Prabhupada. This is now so many years since he's died, 40, 50 years, and yet his legacy and appreciation for him is simply growing. It's endured. His and devotees from all backgrounds were here worshiping very nicely, and the beautiful Krishna Janmashtami that he instituted, we had devotees and guests from all different kinds of backgrounds and places. Many of them had never even been in a temple before or had seen anything like this, and yet they were able to participate, witness Abhishek of Sri Radha and Krishna, offer flowers. It's quite wonderful. And devotees here, we became absorbed in the service of Radha and Krishna, the pastime of Krishna's birth, all of the subtle tattvas about that. But now and then Srila Prabhupada, the greatest charity that Nanda Maharaja could have given that next day was to give to the world our Srila Prabhupada. And so that has taken place. And now Nanda Maharaj, after the birth of his son, is going to go to Mathura. And so we wanted to continue that story, that pastime, through the eyes of the Srimad Bhagavatam. In this case, we're going to read from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Srila Prabhupada drew extensively from his commentaries. And there are some things that he puts in here that Srila Prabhupada did not directly reveal to his audience because his audience had no background, were not ready yet. But because the devotees here have heard these things before and have been in Vrindavan and have heard from Vaishnavas, we want to touch on some of these points of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and this should be pleasing to everyone. We are all followers. He's one of the principal acharyas in our line. And Srila Prabhupada enjoined us to read and study these commentaries. So, we're going to begin with text 19 of this chapter. So, just to set the mood, I'm not generally reading the Sanskrit, but it's the first verse, so Gopan Gokula Rakshayam Nirupya Maturam Gata Nanda Kankshaya Varshikyam Karam Datam Kurudvaha. Shukadev Goswami continued. Thereafter, my dear King Parikshit, O best protector of the Kuru dynasty, Nanda Maharaja appointed the local cowherd men to protect Gokul and then went to Mathura to pay the yearly taxes to King Kamsa. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that many days after the birth of the great treasure known as his son, Nanda began to think, quote, in all good fortune there are many impediments. First, Nanda Maharaj satisfied the demigods, forefathers, planets with worship. Then he immediately left for Mathura with gifts of gold, coins, jewels, and cloth to give to the evil king Kamsa as yearly tax to please him. Very interesting. Nanda Maharaj, the eternal associate, Nitya Siddha Parikar, the eternal father of Lord Krishna, and yet when they appear in this world, they are performed the pastimes, Narvat Leela, in such a way that sets an example on all levels for society. And so even though completely liberated and has no need to do any of these things, he has the conception as being a leader, a king in the cowherd community. And so what is he doing? He's following all of the rules of Varnashram. He's worshiping the demigods, forefathers, right? The leaders of the different planets. He's worshiping them. Of course, they already worship the Brahmanas, and now he's going to pay taxes to the king, right? This is a great example how devotional life is integrated into regular society. And when you read Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Chaitanya Shikshamrita, he gives a very beautiful description of the purpose of the rules and regulations of Varnashram. Even though many of them are very preliminary and don't appear to directly relate to mature bhakti, devotees follow them because for two reasons. One, most of the rules and regulations are aligned with the rules and regulations of Vaidhi Bhakti, right? And furthermore, the practices of Varnashram are meant to purify the general populace, keep them from being absorbed in or in pursuit of sinful activity, giving them an appreciation of a higher purpose in life and a conception of the real structure of life. How is the universe created? Why is it created, right? And even though still most people within society are fruitively motivated, right? They want advancement in this life, in the next life, whether it's a higher birth or going to the heavenly planets or welfare immediately, wealth, prosperity for their family. The practices in the Varnashram Dharma are meant to help them fulfill that. Dharma, the religious rules and regulations. Artha results in prosperity, good economic development individually and for society as a whole. The whole earth benefits. Calm, and if you want, sense gratification and enjoyment. And then when you've gone through all that, you may realize, I can't really enjoy completely. I should seek something even more. And then moksha. And of course, moksha, it doesn't have to mean impersonal liberation. For many people it does. But when one is fortunate, having studied and gone through, process of spiritual education, if one is very fortunate and encounters a mature Vaishnava, then they'll understand the higher meaning of moksha. But Varnashram allows one to become appreciative that everything comes about as a result of service to God. Krishna begins in the third chapter, summarized in second, but in third chapter and fourth chapter, explaining how all works are meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu. And from that, everything else comes. And then gradually, by appreciating, okay, we're under the protection of the Almighty Father, we're doing our duty and we're praying to Him, but gradually by that, and if possible association with great saintly persons, the samskars of bhakti begin implanted in the heart, and then one becomes gradually eligible and appreciative of the higher principles of devotion. So Nanda Maharaj, he's even paying taxes to the king, right? And, in our devotee society, devotees are quite often completely detached from society. They don't pay any taxes. They don't do anything, which is understandable. I mean, society nowadays, we're not serving Maharaj Parikshit. We're not serving King Yudhishthira. The leaders of modern society, they're cheaters, rascal rogues. They're using all their tax money for so many illicit purposes. So devotees detach. But we could, at least on a microcosmic level, begin more and more to try to create our own mini societies following these principles. And in that, taking responsibility, right? Appreciating the interdependence that a society has, one branch to the other. And so each temple, each mat, each community is a small example of that, right? So let's go back to the higher principles here. We've kind of looked at this on one level. So Nanda Maharaj is going, but what's his purpose? His purpose is not just to get along in society. He's doing everything possible. He's not leaving any stone unturned because he wants to protect his glorious son. Right? And so he's satisfying the demigods. He's already satisfied the brahmanas and all the citizens in his own domain. And now he's going to satisfy the king, right? Satisfy the king. In real society, the king is meant to be the representative of God. And he upholds religious principles. Kamsa, unfortunately, was just the opposite. He was like Vena, right? And he was turning everything upside down, topsy-turvy. But still, he's going because he wants to pacify the evil King Kamsa with yearly tax to please him. So, Vasudeva upashutya brataram nandamagatam Gyadva datakaram rage yayotad avamochanam. When Vasudeva heard, this is King Vasudeva, right? Or Prince, heard that Nanda Maharaj, his very dear friend and brother, had come to Mathura and already paid the taxes to Kamsa, he went to Nanda Maharaj's residence. Remember now, as we mentioned earlier, these are cousin brothers. We would call them second cousins, but in that society, very, very close. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, King Devamita of the Jadu dynasty clan, the Yadavas, had two wives, one of a Kshatriya family, the other of a Vaishya family. Through the Kshatriya wife, he bore a son named Sura, and through the Vaishya wife, he bore a son named Parjanya. Sura had a son named Vasudeva, a Kshatriya, and Parjanya had a son named Nanda, a cowherd or Vaishya. Because when you're mixed, right, you take the caste of the lower ranking spouse, in this case, his mother being a Vaishya. He became a Vaishya. But he is a very glorious Vaishya. You can read elsewhere that Nanda Maharaj was so highly regarded, actually Parjanya first was so highly regarded by all the kings and the Kshatriyas of this greater area, this greater Mathura area, that they gifted him this area, this greater area that we know as Greater Vrindavan, to rule. So although he was a Vaishya, he was like a king, like a Vaishya king. And he oversaw it in that way. And he had all the great qualities. A Vaishnava has not only all the great qualities of a Vaishya or a Kshatriya or a Brahmanan, but they have all the great qualities of the demigods. Right? What is that? Yasya bhaktir bhagavat yakinchana sarvaya gunas tatra samasate sura. That when one is an elevated Vaishnav, it's the qualities even of great, great demigods. And so Prajanya was of that, and of his sons, Nanda Maharaj had those qualities to the greatest degree. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur goes on and says, thus Vasudeva and Nanda were brothers or cousins with the same grandfather, a Yadava, right? So, sometimes people think, oh, Krishna's a Yadu because he was the son of Vasudeva, right? Because he's described as a Yadu in many places. But we understand that in Vrindavan, he's also a Yadu. He's a Yadava because his grandfather, even on his father and actually, it's his great-great-grandfather. Anyway, he is the original Yadu. So, Vasudeva and Nanda were brothers or cousins with the same grandfather, a Yadava. Vasudeva and Nanda, let's see, their fathers, Parjanya and Sura, and their grandfather, Devamita, right? And different grandmothers. Nanda was therefore a Yadava. In Skanda Purana, Krishna says, I lifted Govardhan for the benefit of the Jadavas, which means Nanda and others. Krishna told his brother Baladev, among all the Yadavas, that means all those living in Mathura and Braj, you are the most dear. Okay, so now we go to the next verse. Let's get this going. Atam drishtva sahasotaya deha pranam ivagatam prita priyatamam dorbhyam sasvaje prema vivala. When Nanda Maharaj heard that Vasudeva had come, he was overwhelmed with love and affection. Being as pleased as if his body had regained its life, seeing Vasudeva suddenly present, he got up and embraced him with both arms. And Vishwanath Chakravarti reiterates that. When Nanda saw Vasudeva, he embraced him. But they did not pay obeisance because he was elder to Vasudeva. How interesting. Ordinarily, according to caste, right, you would offer obeisance to the higher caste. But Nanda and Vasudeva are cousins, and furthermore, he's the older of the cousin brothers. So they just had brotherly affection, and they're so happy to see each other. And remember, Vasudeva had sent his wives to Nanda for protection, right? Because he was afraid of Kamsa, and he had so much affection and faith in Nanda. And actually, this is Vedic system. The sons live together in the house of the father, right? And then when they take their wives, they still all live there together. Now, they had different fathers, but still they were so close, so that when Vasudeva's wives were in danger because of Kamsa, he sent them under the protection of Nanda. How much more faith do you have in somebody that would represent, right? Out of all the people, places he could have sent his wives, he sent them under the shelter of Nanda. And that way they would be protected in every way. Not just, from the danger that Kamsa might pose to them, but also their reputation, their chastity. Oh, they're living under the same household. They're related. So, Pujita Sukamasina Prishtva Nama Yamadrita Prasakta Di Swamatjayor Idamaha Vishampate. O Maharaj Pricket, having thus been received and welcomed by Nanda Maharaj with honor, Vasudeva sat down very peacefully and inquired about his own two sons because of intense love for him. So Vasudeva is going to speak, and he says, Dishya brata pravasyasa idanim aprajasyate prajashaya nirvittasya prajayat samapatyata. my dear brother Nanda Maharaj, at an advanced age, you had no son at all and were hopeless of having one. Therefore, that you now have a son is a sign of great fortune. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, it would be a lie for Vasudeva to say to Nanda that in old age he had a son. To say that he actually had a daughter would not be believed by Nanda. Therefore, Vasudeva used the word praja, which can mean offspring, either male or female. Right? Like the word prajapati, right, means the father of all praja, right? The prajapatis are the ones that were inspired and empowered to create thousands of children, of high-quality children, to become the leaders and populate all the different planets, right? So he's saying that, what is that? Praja shaya nirvrittasya prajaya samapadyata. You had no son at all and were helpless of having one. Therefore, now that you have a son, it's a great fortune. So, Vasudeva is thinking that he had a daughter. He didn't know that Nanda had a son. That was covered by Yogamaya. So, the word praja was also used because Vasudeva was in doubt as to whether Nanda understood that Vasudeva had put his own son in Jashoda's bed and taken away Nanda's daughter. Unknown. So, Dishtya samsara chakresmin vartamana punarbhava upalabdo bhavanadya dolabam priyadarshanam. It is also by good fortune that I am seeing you. Having obtained this opportunity, I feel as if I have taken birth again. Even though one is present in this world, to meet with intimate friends and dear relatives in this material world is extremely difficult. Yes. He says, Chakravarti Thakur, because I have met you today by good fortune, I have again taken birth in this world. Before meeting you, my life was like death. There's commentary in the Gopi Geet when the gopis are expressing in their extreme state of separation their desire to be with Krishna and the fact that they were reaching what's called the 10th stage of consciousness. And in separation, when love in separation reaches this peak of transcendental despair, the symptoms of death may manifest, where one becomes completely unconscious and even death-like. Srimati Radhika was like that when Uddhava came to visit Vrindavan, and when he went and met with all the gopis, Radhika was at a distance on a bed of completely dried up lotuses, flowers. The sandalwood paste with camphor that had been put on her body to cool her had completely cracked and dried. There was no sign of life in her at all. But because Uddhava had come with a message from Krishna, her dear friends whispered in her ear, "Oh, Krishna's come." And she revived. These associates can never die, but that's to show how much feeling that we had, oh, I'm missing you so much. And even in this world, sometimes you may see the evil YouTube, and as you try to go on and see some nice things, but then you might get distracted. One of the things they like to show is when some soldier comes home after being departed for a long time, right? And the family doesn't know, and then all of a sudden the soldier shows up, from behind or something. They turn around, they go, "Ah!" and they're so happy, right? So even in this world. Or another example, like your dog. Dog hasn't seen you like in a year. Sometimes a dog gets lost, and it's in some shelter, like a prison, right? Like us in the material world, right? We're separated from our beloved. So the dog is separated from its beloved, and it's lost for over a year. And somehow they find it. Oh, they go to the shelter to reclaim the dog, and the dog all of a sudden sees, oh, 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 and they go crazy, right? And then they are let out, and they're leaping with joy. The soul wants to be reunited with their most beloved. In this world, we only have a reflection of that, and yet still we see examples at that moment how much joy can come. What to speak of in the heart of these great self-realized personalities, what kind of emotion they may have, right? And in our own societies, when we see our old God brothers and God sisters that we may have served with nicely and done so many things with and grown with, and they're doing seva somewhere else, and we're doing seva somewhere else, and when we see them after a long time, it creates such happiness and joy, right? Oh, and here's the example. I was going to speak this because it's in Jaiva Dharma. Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains this, but here, Vasudeva is going to say this. This is great. Nai katra priyasamvasa suhridam chitta karmanam agena vyuyamananam plavanam svatasojata. Many planks and sticks, unable to stay together, are carried away by the force of a river's waves. Similarly, although we are intimately related with friends and family members, we are unable to stay together because of our varied past deeds and the waves of time. Chakravarti Thakur says, anticipating the proposal, quote, if that is so, then now we can stay together, right? Oh, now you're here, let's be together. Vasudeva speaks this verse. Dear friend, just as twigs and grass cannot stay together in the flow of the river, we also cannot stay together. So take advantage of this time together. That's a good message for us when we want to be with our beloved spiritual master, right? Yesterday was an opportunity. Every moment is an opportunity, but on these special days, like their appearance day, disappearance day, and other significant days, special day to remember. And in that remembrance, we're reuniting. In that unification, such happiness and pleasure comes to the heart, but then we realize, our time together, direct time, appeared so brief, and now, again, we're separated, and again, the pain in my heart. There's a very beautiful prayer, the Ashtakam, he wrote to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And it's in the rays of the harmonist, the issue called Jewels of Separation. And many, many great acharyas are speaking of separation from their guru. There's a nice article by Bhaktivedanta Keshav Maharaj about his separation from Saraswati Prabhupada. And this article is about our Srila Prabhupada's separation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada. And in it, he is remembering all the instructions, all the Manabhishta of Saraswati Prabhupada in 8 times 8 verses, in beautiful Bengali verse. It's a masterpiece. And at the end of every 4 or 3, then the 4th line, he's saying, oh, my beloved master, on this day of separation, I am feeling immeasurable pain. Right? He's remembering, but he's feeling that pain of separation so much. And yet, in spiritual separation, even at our stage, we can get a small taste of the kind of happiness that separation produces. It's overwhelming, and it manifests like pain or weeping or whatever, symptoms may appear in a shadow form to us, and yet, we would like to be like that all the time. So absorbed in that sense of connection and that remembrance that we're inspired. Because these moods inspire us to what? To want to stay in connection in what way? By service, right? By service to Sri Guru, service to his Manubhishta, his purpose, his mission, and service to those who have come in the generations later who are trying to become part of that jump into that grand flow this flow of bhakti, this mission of Mahaprabhu, this great river, Sometimes we call it the Bhaktivinoda Dhara, the conceptions of Bhaktivinoda, right? That current. But we also know it as that flood of that grand body of water that Nityananda came and broke the dam and opened it up and spread, and it flooded all of Bengal and all of India. And then furthermore, Srila Prabhupada broke that dam and opened it up to the Western world, and it was spread everywhere. So, yesterday especially was an opportunity to reconnect with the phenomena of Srila Prabhupada's mission and what he was able to accomplish, and in some way beg to be part of that, right? And that means not just in a small way ourselves, of course that's very good, but to appreciate all the different branches and tributaries and devotees that are serving all over the world in different ways. Don't fall victim to the Kanishta mentality of sectarianism and party spirit. Wherever you see a little spark of that flame or a great fire showing, that devotion and dedication to that mission, we honor that. We embrace that, right? So, now Vasudeva is going to make some inquiry. And this is how you meet together. This is civilized culture. He's expressed, I'm so glad to see you now. My life has returned. It's so unfortunate that sometimes we're together and then other times we have to be apart. But now that we're together, Kachit Pashavyam Nirujam Boyambu Trina Virudam Brihadvanam Taraduna Yatra Setvam Suhridvrita. My dear friend, Nanda Maharaj, in the place where you are living with your friends, is the forest favorable for the animals, the cows? I hope that there is no disease or inconvenience. The place must be full of water, grass, and other plants. So, when religion is being followed nicely, then the earth is prosperous, right? So, in other words, this question is full of meaning, because if these things are there, everything's going nicely, the forest is full of grass, beautiful streams, flowers, fruits are everywhere, roots, no disease, no inconvenience, that means the brahmanas are being served nicely, right? Proper yajna, sacrifice, homa, that's being done. And thus all the ingredients and all the conditions for harmonious, happy, prosperous, and peaceful life are being met, right? But harmonious, prosperous, and peaceful life, it's not independent of the performance of religious function. See, in modern society, people are trying to enjoy all the fruits of the world, all the fruits of the universe, but with no acknowledgement and recognition of their relationship and dependence on God. And so they think that we can do it. Materialistic people, since the beginning of time, there have always been scientists, Sankhya people, who analyze the world in terms of the cause and effect up to the level of seeing things only on the material level. Right? And they think that thus they can control, they can intervene, they're the masters of their own destiny. And this is the state of affairs, of course, in modern society. The rulers and the chief ministers and advisors are actually demons. Kamsa's, we just heard, what did Kamsa's so-called ministers giving him advice for his welfare and the welfare of his kingdom? Kill all the babies born in the last 10 days, just to make sure that one child might not be alive. Do whatever you have to do. Also, destroy the brahmanas, right? Kill cows, kill them all. Anything that might impede our desire, right? So selfish, so infinitely narcissistic, right? With no appreciation of the higher order of the universe and the beauty of spirit united with God, right? Completely opposite to that. And we experienced that recently, where worldwide the demons became so powerful, they shut down everything. Nobody can go to church, right? Oh, you can go to Walmart, if you wear a mask. You can go to Costco and all these big stores. You can do what's beneficial to us. You can buy all this medicine that we're going to sell you at these inflated prices, but no going to church, no going to meet with your friends and family, right? No going anywhere, and you have to cover your faces so nobody can see you smile. Nobody can see the delight of meeting together. You can't even meet together in society. They're separating everybody, right? And killing. That's demons. So here, everything should be happy in your kingdom, right? Everything favorable, not just for people, but also the animals and the cows, right? So he goes on to ask, Bhratur mama sutta kachin matur saha bhavadvaje tatam bhavantam manvano bhavabhyamupalatita. My son Baladev, being raised by you and your wife, Jashoda Devi, considers you his father and mother. Is he living very peacefully in your home with his real mother, Rohini? Purport. Is my child Balaram happy? Does he think of you as his father? Right? And Nanda is like his father because he's his uncle. He's definitely his uncle. And sometimes, in Veda culture especially, a son or a daughter may be given to a cousin who may not have a son or a daughter and raised in that way. But even in an extended household, the cousins, the brothers, they will treat the children like their own. Right? So that's the beauty of that system. In modern society, what happens? They've got to the point where they make both the mother and the father work. It used to be, at least in the West, that if the father worked, even a modest income could support the whole family, and the mother could stay home, take care of the children, and that's good. Kids are adjusted, protected, like that. But now they induce them that both should work, and thus both will become happier. Why? Because then you can have more stuff, right? Live a greater lifestyle. But then, of course, when there's more money, inflation and everything costs more. Now you have to have two incomes just to get along, right? And now one income, you can't even, hardly get an apartment. They just keep making it more and more difficult. And then what's the consequence for the children? No stability in the home, no mother there, raised by some third entity, right? The schools and the daycare, and those, under the guidance of the demons, indoctrinate the children with atheistic conceptions, really strange conceptions of morality. I'm not going to get into all the details. Everybody knows who wants to give them energy. But here, his most dear son Baladev, through his wife Rohini completely protected, she was like the sister of Jashoda. Nanda gave her full protection and love, and so his son, he knew his son was protected, right, and raised very beautifully, right? And in this Leela, that's how it is. In actuality, because Rohini gave birth in Vrindavan, and that son that she bore in Vrindavan, right, was actually not exactly the same son that Rohini had been impregnated from Vasudeva. That was actually an expansion of Baladev. And she bore him, and then actually his expansion in the womb of Devaki. They didn't understand that Devaki's seventh son, who appeared to be miscarried, had actually been transferred into the womb of Rohini. And so because she was in the womb of Rohini, then it was naturally assumed, this is the son of Vasudeva also, right? Of course it was. Except that when he was transferred into the womb of Rohini, then he became Baladev, the original Sankarshan, the source of all other incarnations. And so Rohini gave birth in Vrindavan to the original Balaram, right? So in one sense, still, of course, the son of Vasudeva, but in another sense, he is the eternal brother of Krishna. They may have come from different wombs, but he's the first expansion of Krishna, that Baladev, right? And when they both go to Mathura, then when they leave, when Akrura comes to take them, and just on the border of Mathura and Vrindavan, when they bathe in the river, Akrura Ghat, at the river, then Krishna and Balaram from Vrindavan enter that river, and Akrura also takes his bath, and he sees them in the river, but then when he looks back on the chariot, he sees another Krishna and Balaram waiting to go with him. They're both there simultaneously, and when he gets back on the chariot and they go to Mathura, he's taking with them actually those first forms of Krishna and Balaram in the Chatur Vyuha. Balaram expands into Vasudeva Krishna, Sankarshan, Baladev, and then later Pradyumna and Aniruddha manifest, right? But the original Krishna and Balaram, they never leave Vrindavan, although they are no longer visible directly to the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Sometimes they are in Spurti and in different ways, but nobody believes that they're actually there. Not just in Spurti, but they may appear directly, but when the gopis or Mother Jashoda or others see them, they think, oh, this is a dream. But Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. Vrindavana paditagya na ekam padam gacchati. Mahaprabhu told this to Rupa Goswami on his way to, when Rupa Goswami was going to Puri from Vrindavan to meet with Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He had been writing his very beautiful book, Vidagdha Madhav. And he was going to write about Krishna Leela in Vrindavan and in Dwarka, right? But on the way, he stopped at Satyabhampura, named after Satyabhama. And when he stopped there, he had a dream at night where Satyabhama came, please make 2 books. Write about my pastimes of Krishna in Dwarka separately from the pastimes of Krishna in Vrindavan. And he was astonished by that dream. Satyabhama, you could say the most beloved queen of Krishna, because she's an expansion of Srimati Radhika. And Rukmini, his first queen and chief queen, is expansion of Chandravali. Right? So when he gets to Puri, Rupa Goswami, Mahaprabhu gives him the same instruction. And he says, the original Krishna never leaves Vrindavan. He never leaves Vrindavan. So you should make a separate drama, divide the drama into 2. So there's Vidagdha Madhav and Lalit Madhav. Lalit Madhav being the later pastimes. But we understand from this that they're not the same personality. In one sense they are. By Tattva, they're completely the same. It is Krishna. And actually, in this Leela, that Krishna has the conception, Vasudeva Krishna has the conception that I am that Krishna that left, and I'm in separation from my gopis. But he's a different form who has a different Leela so that he can interact with different kinds of devotees. The devotees in Mathura and in Dwarka, they can't serve Krishna in the same way that the devotees in Vrindavan serve him. And they can even be astonished, thinking, oh, this is Krishna, but he took even greater joy and happiness in Vrindavan. The service of the gopis and his parents and his cowherd boyfriends was so intimate and high that he remembers them even at night when he's embracing us and he's asleep. He's calling out the names. Oh, Lalita, oh, Vishaka, oh, Radhe, where are you? What is this? What kind of love did they have that our love seems insignificant compared to theirs, right? So it's subtle tattva, subtle tattva. So, my son Baladev, being raised by you and your wife, Jashoda Devi, considers you his father and mother. Is he living very peacefully in your home with his real mother, Rohini? Then punksas trivargo vihita suhrido yanubhavita nateshu klish jamaneshu trivargo ritaya kalpate. When one's friends and relatives are properly situated, one's religion, economic development, and sense gratification, as described in the Vedic literatures, are beneficial. Otherwise, if one's friends and relatives are in distress, these three cannot offer any happiness. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains, to express the fact that his household life was a failure, Vasudeva spoke this verse. For a man, 3 duties or vargas are prescribed by the scripture for the purpose of satisfying his wife and children. In my case, by being separated from wife and child and causing them suffering, and by not raising my son, the 3 vargas are useless. Thus, my household life has been a failure. Externally, you would think like that, right? But actually, and this is the humility of a Vaishnava, but the glory of Vasudeva and Devaki is to show that even amidst the greatest distress, their connection and love of God was undeterred. And their personal great qualities were only magnified. And Srila Prabhupada said, especially when you read 16th and 17th chapter of the first canto, when Parikshit Maharaj is talking to Dharma, the bull, after all their suffering, he glorifies him for his mentality, where he was not blaming the personality of Kali directly. He's saying suffering comes from so many different sources, right, according to one's own past good and bad deeds. So he wouldn't directly put the blame even on Kali, who had just been beating him. And his forbearance, tolerance, and higher understanding so impressed Parikshit Maharaj that he said, oh, you must be the personality of religion himself, which he was, Dharma, the bull, but disguised like that. And then Srila Prabhupada explains in his purport that Krishna will put his devotees in this difficulty to show their glory, to show their unshaken devotion and adherence to the highest Dharma, not just ordinary Dharma. They may transgress ordinary Dharma in those conditions, like Vasudeva, taking the girl child, right? And even with the knowledge that she might be killed, right? But because of what? What did we hear? We heard because of his high state of prema and the order of the Lord himself, he did that which appears in the ordinary sense to be a little sketchy or inappropriate, but is an expression of great pure love. And so whatever difficulty a devotee is in, they don't care if they can remember the Lord and serve the Lord. And so our Srila Prabhupada was a prime example of that. Even before he arrived on the western shores, he had 2 or 3 heart attacks on the boat, all right? And he could have died. And the seas were so rough and turbulent at that one point that he didn't know if he would be able to survive. And then what happened? He had a dream. Not a dream like our dreams. Not a collection of mental memories and stress put together to work it all out, but a real, what's called Swapna Darshan, where in that state Krishna will appear. And Krishna appeared before him, and he was in a boat, and his boat was towing Srila Prabhupada's boat. And all the seas became calm, and everything became gentle. And Krishna was smiling and encouraging him. And when Srila Prabhupada awoke, his health had returned, and miraculously the seas became placid and smooth. And at the end of the voyage, the wife of the captain said, oh, Swamiji, in a joking way, please come with us every time on the boat. But because of you, we crossed the Atlantic on seas so smooth, it's never happened to us. They'd been doing this for more than a decade, right? And they'd never seen seas so smooth. So Krishna, on the one hand, he put his devotee under difficulty to glorify him, to show his steadfastness and unflinching devotion and determination to the world. But then personally embraced him and said, now I'll show you, you're completely under my protection. Whatever comes to you from now on, have no fear. I'm always with you. And Srila Prabhupada endured a lot of austerity and difficulties, but he was never deterred. Never deterred. So it's very wonderful. And he's saying here that if friends and relatives are properly situated in religion, in other words, when they're following the rules of civilized society, the religious rules, everything is good, right? And so he's thinking, we did so much suffering, we had so much suffering, so we must not have been following properly. But don't think that. If a great devotee is suffering, everything comes directly from Krishna to glorify them, to show their transcendental love, which is unafflicted and unwavering, even in the face of the greatest difficulty. Like Queen Kunti prayed. Oh, let these difficulties come again and again. Insignificant. Because in that, it incites us to pray and call for you even more deeply. And then you come. And so, in that way, our life is fulfilled. Birth and death, insignificant. So tomorrow, Nanda Maharaja is going to respond. And we'll hear about that. His pacifying Vasudeva and their discussion, and then what happens after that when he returns to Vrindavan. So we'll stop here, and we'll offer our obeisance to Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Gurudev, all of our Guru Parampara, right? And we, oh man, I had this set up wrong. It's just my head. All right. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Srila Gurudev. Jai, Jai, all glories to all the assembled Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis. Haribol.